Your Excellencies, including, I'm pleased to say, the ambassador of my state party of nationality, the Republic of Ireland, as well as ladies and gentlemen. I first met the then Deputy Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court 1 August several years ago at the International Humanitarian Law Dialogues in Chautauqua, New York, of which many people in this room are also veterans. It is perhaps fortuitous that that session, my then pre-teenaged son, Tiernan O'Neill, accompanied me to the conference. And, believe it or not, was the very first person to pose a question to Madam Prosecutor after she completed her remarks. At age 14, my son accompanied me to a conference at The Hague and watched with me by live feed the Lubanga judgment being delivered from a courtroom not far away. Later that day, the organizer of the conference, Ambassador Sheffer, whom I believe also is in the room, asked my son to intervene. And so he gave the child's perspective on the then viral video, Coney 2012. I'm very pleased to report that my son Tiernan is an 18-year-old freshman at UCLA. And that, last week, on the day after the election of the president of my non-party state of nationality, he and many other students marched for human rights and democratic principles. His support and the support of my husband, Peter O'Neill, who himself survived Ireland's Bloody Sunday massacre just days after he turned 18 years old, support me and have sustained me in my service as Special Advisor to the International Criminal Court Prosecutor on children in and affected by armed conflict. There are too many people to thank for their assistance with this policy. The prosecutor, of course, but I'd also like to name Shamila Batoi, Yayoi Yamaguchi, Gloria Atiba Davis in particular. They have been my sisters and colleagues throughout this process, as well as the many, many people on the ICC staff who have worked with dedication and seriousness of purpose in preparing this report. I'd also like to thank my home institution, the Dean Rusk International Law Center at the University of Georgia School of Law. I'm very proud that we hosted the first experts consultation on this policy, as well as my school of current matriculation as a PhD candidate, Leiden Law School, which hosted the second experts consultation on this policy. There are many others whom I should thank, but I do not have time. You know who you are, and rest assured, your support is greatly appreciated. I am especially proud of two aspects of this policy. The first is that the policy, as High Commissioner Zaid mentioned, adopts, and as well as the prosecutor, adopts a child-sensitive approach. That approach is defined by express incorporation of the 1989 Convention on the Rights of the Child and the four guiding principles of that convention: the right of a child not to be discriminated against, the right of a child to have his or her best interests taken into account when decisions are made about him or her, the right of the child to life, survival, and development, and the right of the child, as we've heard in the videos today, to express his or her own views and have them considered. The other aspect is the extent to which this policy responds to the prosecutor's call to action. Even before she was sworn in as prosecutor, she made a speech that said, "I would like to focus not only on the children who carry arms, about whom General Dallaire so eloquently spoke, but also the children who are affected by the arms. We have tried throughout this process to have all those children in mind, and I'm very proud about the extent to which we have been able to do that. I would like to close with a quote from another child who experienced armed conflict, and in fact, she herself was a non-combatant. She endured many years of armed occupation and ultimately at age 15 perished amid armed conflict. Her name is Anne Frank. I visited her home yesterday while I was in Amsterdam, and I read her book over the weekend to remind myself of why we do these things. I believe I'm not the only one whose understanding, or at least initial understanding, of the experiences of children amid armed conflict was informed and shaped by her diary. In one passage of her diary, just days before the ultimate raid that led to her transportation to the death camp, she wrote, "I hear the gathering thunder. I feel our planet in the wilderness. I feel the suffering of millions. And yet, when I look to the heavens, I feel it will come out all right, and that one day we shall return to peace and tranquility." With that last hopeful note, I thank you and wish you good night.